one of the fallacies that a lot of people make is that you have to go to this big monstrositous ministry or church or building for you to for you to get value as a speaker. I served under the late Bishop G.E. Patterson, which wasn't a small ministry, but went to work under his Soul Winners Conference. I was part of the Soul Winners Conference committee. Everybody wasn't, and I was over transportation. So practically everybody that it came to a Soul Winners Conference, I've been in a car with them. I've taken them to the room. We had discussions, and I'm a preacher and a thinker. So even though I was just a driver, I'm going to ask them questions. And all of a sudden I started knowing people from one year to the next, and then they introduce you to this person out of town and that person out of town. Before you know it, you have a little bit of a network. And even back in the 90s, now don't prejudge, because I knew guys in the 90s that can't be found, basically, that were getting $30,000 and $40,000 for a speaking engagement. I knew one guy, and I had him here for visits until he could no longer do it. Several times, small churches, went to small churches every time. And the small churches saw the greatest week that they had ever seen, other than the annual day. They never thought that a regular midweek service, this guy just could flat do it. But he had some other problems. He disappeared off the scene. I have seen he's reappeared somewhere, and most people don't even know his name. But look, where you're overlooking, somebody else is walking in those doors. And what I did for others is I opened doors for other people because of the way that some older gentlemen really believed in me, and they would listen. And I did keep up with who was here and who was there and everything. And that proved valuable. I didn't know you could charge for that. Several years back, when I spoke on a very large stage, and I met a guy whose name you would know pretty easily because he's been around the circuit or Christian television for a long time. He's the guy that gets you on TV. He charges for that. He's the guy that gets you introduced. When he introduces you, his fee comes with the introduction. So while you're overlooking, you never know who's sitting in this small building. You never know who can connect you with somebody of influence. You never know. So if you're you only want to use the same one or two names. I had a musician once, and we have a small ministry, and I just naturally assumed that he was getting a mother load because he played at another church that was much larger than ours. But I found out that we were paying him more. So you don't know. Stop overlooking doors. You've been praying for the big door. The big door may be that little building across town where they invited you and you're sneering down your nose at it. We got people that overlook and they want the big names, and you don't know how the big names will even treat you once they get you inside their doors. You don't know. I've been and seen people in conference settings where back in the day where in the 90s where some of the big names wanted to split 50-50 straight down the middle, and you split 50-50 straight down the middle, and then the stop payments on checks come, the bad checks start coming, and all of a sudden you take a L. Sometimes it's so much simpler to go to a church, naturally tell them whatever your since you're going out of your way, what your honorarium expectation or whatever, that can be settled. And stop trying to always hit the big door. You don't know how those folks will treat you inside of the door. And because it's a big door, doesn't mean that they preach any better than you. It doesn't mean that they teach any better than you. It doesn't mean, they just have a larger door. Don't be crazy and forsake smaller doors on this thing. You're going to starve waiting for, I don't go to churches of that size. A church of that size can write you a check to change your life. You don't know what people got. You don't know what member they may have. Isaac Bruce attended Temple Deliverance and was a generous giver for years. He gave once. He gave. I think they called him from athletic resource management. Jimmy Sexton ran that company, and they called Bishop Patterson, and they asked Bishop Patterson, "We have a check here made out to your ministry, but we don't have a runner today. So when we get a runner next week, we'll have the check brought on by." And Bishop Patterson said, excuse me, how much is the check for? And he said, it was something 160, 180, something like that. Bishop, no need for the runner. I'm going to come over and pick that up myself. And then he gave larger checks. But Isaac Bruce now belongs to a small church. Who knows that Isaac Bruce is one of their ministers? They belongs to a church in Florida, maybe with 100 members. You don't know what you walk into. You don't know what open door. I see people do this, and they kill more doors than they open. We live in a world of a bunch of doors. And I hear this thing about people say, man, you do that, they're going to blackball you. Man, your blackball is so small. There are so many doors in this world that you'd have to blackball all day and all night. And then if you did it for the next 30 years, we're only talking about 1 or 2% of the population. Look, folks, there are many doors to get in. You're waiting for this great big old door, and God could use a small door to bless your life and turn it into a big door. So, hey, let's stop sneering at some of the smaller doors. That may be a door that God wants you to go in and bless your life. Be blessed.